Hello, I'm Andy Deering,
And I'm Lisa Radke.
and we're here. This is the second YouTube of a two-part series here on repeal of property tax in Craig with regard to the referendum that will be on the October 2nd ballot this fall for city residents to vote on. I did an earlier YouTube. If you haven't seen that, it might be best to look at that one first. That earlier YouTube is all about reasons for repealing property tax in Craig, and we went through a lot of good reasons, I think. And then this YouTube is going to be about how to go about accommodating the lack of revenue should the repeal of property tax be successful. Now I've got a list of ideas on how to accommodate that lack of revenue. But I have to make sure you understand right now that I'm just a private citizen, just like everybody else here in Craig, and I can't dictate how the city spends its money. I can suggest a lot of things, and you can suggest a lot of things as well, and I encourage you to do just that. I think a lot of public input would be really good on this. But so just keep in mind, my ideas here are Lisa and I both worked pretty hard on this, coming up with a lot of ideas on how to do this, but they're just ideas and they're just suggestions. They're not off-the-cuff suggestions, though. They're well thought out suggestions. We attend council meetings regularly. We also attend budget meetings, and we get actively involved. We have right here, I have copy of the City of Craig budget for 2019. We had the 2018, the 2017, the 2016. We had all the budgets, and we look through them a lot. They're sitting right here in our home, and we pay attention to it, and we look at it, and we scratch our heads, and we have been for a long time. So this idea that the City of Craig can operate without property tax is not something that we've just come up with this month or this year even. We've been talking about it and thinking about it and scratching our heads on it for years. So we'd like to give you a few of these ideas. I'll just start at the top of the list here and work through some of them. Some of them involve basically tightening the belt of the city corporation, spending less money on city stuff. And others involve the possibility of other revenue sources. And I want to just reiterate here that this referendum proposal would reduce, eventually would eliminate or repeal property taxation in Craig by 2025, which gives them 6 fiscal years to repeal the 6 mills of property tax. So so right off, let's just take a look at how much property tax does the City of Craig bring in a typical year. In this year's budget, it looks like the City of Craig will bring in somewhere around $650,000 in property tax, give or take. And that's fairly consistent with how it's been in the past few years, somewhere around $600,000. So a rough estimate, when you're talking about your 6 mills of property tax, it's kind of an easy thing to just equate 1 mill to $100,000. That's kind of a good way to look at it. So if you can reduce the budget by $100,000, you can reduce the property tax by 1 mill. And so let's look at how that can be done. The first thing on the list is city council health benefits, essentially city insurance for the city council members. This is something that we talked about a little bit in the last YouTube, but this health benefits have already been eliminated from the budget. The health care benefits for the city council has been removed from the budget, saving over $100,000 annually. Okay, well, we were really happy about that. We kind of helped fight for that. However, what happened to it? Did you benefit from it at all? I mean, did I benefit, or did you benefit in some way from that reduction of $100,000? Where did that $100,000 savings go? And when we started to think about this, we realized that what is the point of trying to save money in the city budget if we as people who live here don't really benefit from that. I mean, if there isn't some direct benefit to reduction in budget, it's like you and your household, foregoing ice cream for a week to save some money. Well, you actually save money and you have money in your pocket at the end and you get some benefit from that. Well, it doesn't work that way here. That $100,000 just got sort of slushed into the rest of the budget. And I don't think that's right at all. It's over $100,000, and the way I look at it, that $100,000 should have and actually should go to tax break for the people, and that just so happens to equate very nicely with a 1 mil reduction in property tax for the city of Craig. So that's 1/6 of the way there, and as far as I'm concerned, we already did it. So there's some additional savings possible there. Even currently, the mayor still receives health care benefits, health insurance benefits for him and his family, and that equates to somewhere over over $20,000 annually. And we look around mayors around the rest of the state of Alaska, and that's not common. That's not a common occurrence. In fact, we weren't able to find any other mayor who received it. So we think if you're operating the city, and let's just say the city decides to hire a carpenter, and the going rate for carpenters is $30 an hour. Well, should the city hire a carpenter for $60 an hour? Is that really how it should work? And no, there's a going rate for things. As Lisa just mentioned here, reminded me, is that the mayor does receive a salary. He receives over $11,000 annually in the salary. And actually, we did a comparison study around the state of Alaska on mayors, and we found that even that is far more than most mayors receive. Certainly for a town this size, it far surpasses what a mayor would normally receive. In fact, if you look at Ketchikan, with the health insurance included, and the mayor's City of Craig mayor's health benefits and salary, equates to somewhere at least 3 times more than the City of Ketchikan's mayor. And I don't think anybody would argue that the City of Ketchikan mayor doesn't have as hard a job as the City of Craig mayor. I mean, it's a lot bigger city. There's a lot more going on there. But there are ways to cut. I think that this is why it's good that we have 6 mills in 6 years, because we don't have to cut the mayor's benefits right in the middle of his term. That would be a nasty thing to do, and I'm not into doing nasty things to people, and I don't think most people are, and that's a good thing. But maybe at the beginning of the next mayor's term, whether this mayor is reelected or not, it can be a part of the contract that there is no health insurance benefit. So, that saves. It's not a lot of money, but it all really adds up. I might add that in this cost savings and possible revenue sources that Lisa and I have come up with here, we've come up with over $1 million in ways to offset property tax. So over $1 million to accommodate a loss of $650,000 revenue. And that just means that there's all different possible choices, and these are not by any means all the choices. I'm sure people, and over the next 6 years, should this pass, we can come up with all sorts of different ways to come up with strategic either revenue funding, additional funding, or cost-cutting measures. So moving along, another one that really aggravates me, and I think it aggravates a lot of people, and most people actually don't even know about it, is that the City of Craig hires a DC lobbyist firm every year for $36,000 of your tax money, yours and I tax money. And so what does this lobbyist do for us? Well, I'm sure you probably don't know. Most of the time I don't know. Occasionally there's a report that gets sent to the city as to what this lobbyist does, but it grates me wrong that we have to pay for a DC city lobbyist in the first place. I mean, I think the City of Craig, the people in the City of Craig, when I talk to them, there's really a diverse spectrum of political ideas here. I mean, there's all aspects of the political spectrum, and to suggest that a lobbyist is going to lobby correctly to represent all of us is impossible and crazy, and therefore I think it's best not to have it at all. Now the argument is that, well, they bring home the bacon, they bring us a lot of federal money, and they bring us this and they bring us that. Well, sometimes you have to put ethics a little bit ahead of the bacon, and at least that's how I look at it. And also, again, there's a lot of very controversial issues that the lobbyist pushes for that I'm sure a lot of you would vehemently disagree if you knew that the lobbyist was doing this. So I would say just it's a no-brainer. Eliminate the lobbyist. $36,000 a year. If it were up to me, I'd say get rid of it. We've thrown in a couple of possible revenue sources. There's some possible windfalls coming up for the city of Craig. They may or may not take place, but they are possibilities. One, right now, the city of Craig City Council has already had the first reading on this, and they have unanimously voted for it in the first reading. They'll have one more reading coming up at the next council meeting. I suspect they will pass it, and this will put on the ballot in October a 1% possible sales tax increase in the city of Craig. So coming up on the ballot, likely you will be asked whether to vote yes or no on a 1% sales tax increase. This 1% is supposed to be going to the pool, to fund the pool. I'm going to talk about the pool a little bit more later, but essentially 1% sales tax brings in around $300,000 annually. And so what would happen if this 1% sales tax were passed, we would have $300,000 new money coming into an already balanced city budget, and the $300,000 that's currently spent on the pool, it's much more than that, but the $300,000 that this new sales tax revenue would displace would be basically extra revenue, and that extra revenue we think should it come to pass, should be given directly back to the people in the form of a 3 mil reduction in property tax. That alone would reduce property tax it'd cut it in half, 3 mils. So that's a possibility. I don't know how people are going to vote on it. I'm not advocating that you vote for it or against it. It's a new way of taxing, and it's just a new way of bringing in revenue. But it may happen, and it may not. We'll see how the voters vote, but it's quite likely to be on the ballot. Another possible windfall coming up is internet sales tax. Recently, a Supreme Court decision allowed for states that have sales tax to charge sales tax on internet sales. So in other words, if you live in Alaska, if the state of Alaska had sales tax, which we currently don't, if it had tax and you bought something from Amazon, say for instance, Amazon would have to pay the state of Alaska for that transaction to the amount that the state taxes. Now, municipalities have looked at this and are looking at this as possible tax sources as well, because the city of Craig potentially may be able to have a windfall from this as well. The city of Craig charges 5% sales tax, and they may be able to get that or some or all of that from internet sales tax, which it could be huge, could be really huge. I don't know how much all of you buy on the internet, but I've gotten so that I buy quite a bit. It's a huge piece of my budget and Lisa's budget, and so it could be an enormous windfall for the city. We've thrown out the number of $100,000 a year. That's probably really low when you consider that the city of Craig takes over $1.5 million in sales tax locally, and you think a lot of the local people buy a fourth of their stuff on the internet. I mean, it could be who knows? It could be as much as 1/4 of 1.5 million. I mean, it could be $400,000 revenue instead of $100,000 revenue. We don't know. It's speculation at this point. It hasn't been approved, but it's something to consider. And we think that additional revenue like that. This is one of the reasons we're moving forward with this referendum, is that when the city receives revenue windfall and to an already balanced budget, we think that revenue windfall should be applied, given back to the people who live here. And you can't argue that the people who have property tax aren't the people who actually live in the city of Craig. And they should reap the benefits to this. So that's another potential windfall. Okay, most of the cuts that I see, that I advocate in the city of Craig, don't involve essential services. Essentially, when you talk about essential services, we're talking about water and sewer and roads and garbage, and maybe harbors. I guess we're stuck with harbors. We kind of have to take care of them. But the other one would be police. Most people argue that police is an essential service. I mean, fire and EMS, those are such a small portion of the budget that fire is volunteer. It's hardly a consideration. But police. Well, police is one place I would really look at essential services for saving some money. Lisa and I did a comprehensive study of number of patrol officers per capita, which means how many people actually carry a gun and are on patrol in a municipality compared with how many people live in that municipality. So we did this study, and we looked at Ketchikan, Sitka, Homer, Wrangell, Dillingham, Cordova, Houston, Craig, Skagway, Sandpoint, Delta Junction, North Pole, a whole bunch of them around Alaska that were on either side in population to Craig. What we found was that per capita, the city of Craig has more police officers than any of them, and for the most part by a far cry, far above. We're gonna try to link some of this stuff below when we're finished here, so that you can actually look at it. We have the comparative study, and I'd like for you to look at it. And so we asked, well, why? So why are there so many police in Craig? And we've been asking that question since we got here. A lot of visitors that come here ask me the same thing. Well, why on earth are there so many police in Craig? Is crime really rampant here? Is this a really crime hub? Well, I don't see it that way at all. And most of the people I talk to don't see it that way at all. They don't really understand why there's so many police here. And the police is very expensive. The police budget is approaching $1 million. It's I believe this year it's 800 and some thousand, but it's a lot of money. Now a lot of the police budget, there's 10.5 full-time positions in the police here in Craig, but many of them are dispatch, and they work in the jail. The city of Craig has a jail, and DMV and that sort of thing. So the dispatch, there's contracted services there that actually bring in money. So like dispatch, we do dispatch for city of Cloac, we do dispatch for the state troopers and for the Forest Service. All of these things are contracts that the city of Craig has, and those dispatch things more than pay for themselves through the contract services. They also have contracted services for the jail. And for DMV, so when you go into the DMV, the state pays us to have a manned DMV office here. So we really didn't look at those as necessary for cost-cutting purposes, and we really didn't look at those positions at all in our comparative study to the other towns around Alaska. We just looked at patrol officers, and you walk out here on the street in Craig, 5 will get you 10 that there'll be a patrol car driving around. I mean, all the time. And that's a good thing, I guess, unless you happen to be getting pulled over for tail light out constantly or some little thing. Other than that, people argue that, hey, that's a good thing, but it's not a free thing. It's not at all free. It's very expensive. And so just to bring Craig just to consider bringing Craig more in line with other cities around Alaska. You could reduce the patrol officers from 5 to 3, so you could eliminate 2 patrol officers, and that could eliminate 1/3 of all property tax in Craig. Right there. And, again, we don't want to be nasty to anybody. I wouldn't recommend, you just fire them and send them out on their tail. But through attrition, it could happen naturally over the next 6 years. There's a high turnover in the police force here in Craig. I had discussions with the police chief, and it's a fact. The turnover is very high. So just through a natural attrition rate, we could eliminate, say, 1 officer in a year or 2, and in a couple of years more, eliminate another officer, and pretty soon you've eliminated 1/3 of the property tax right there. So that's really the only so-called essential services that I'm really seriously looking at here as a possible reduction. And I think it needs to be talked about. It hasn't been talked about. We've tried to get the council to discuss it, and they're reluctant to do so. I'm not sure why, but it's time that we do discuss it, I think. And again, it's just another possibility. All right, now the pool. I mentioned the pool a little bit earlier. The pool is really is a hot topic of discussion. When I talk about trying to save money in the pool, I met with a lot of criticism. People say, well, you don't care about the children, or you want children to drown, and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a really hot topic. So what we've proposed is, one possibility would be to close the pool during the summer. As a big money-saving, cost-cutting proposition. And what would that do? Well, it would save a lot of money. There's no question about that. The question is, how many people here would it really harm? Would kids not learn to swim if we close the pool during the summer? Well, I don't think that anybody would argue that. All the swimming lessons take place, and the school swimming activities take place during the school year in the winter when the pool is open. It's also on part of public record that the Craig pool gets most of its local attendance in the winter. People are busy in the summers, and another thing to consider is that, as Lisa just mentioned, the pool is closed in the summer for a period to do maintenance anyway. The pool gets drained and maintenance gets done. So I think people should look at that. Maybe you don't realize how expensive the pool is. Just to put things into perspective, last year the pool budget, or this year's pool budget, is $661,000 annually. Now that is more than what the whole city brings in property tax in a year. And that is more than what the city puts into the school, both Craig schools, in a year. The city of Craig pool is extremely expensive. We did some calculations based on attendance at the pool. It turns out if you go in, or you or I go into the pool and we take a swim, or we use the sauna, or we use the weight room, and we pay our $4 admission fee. I guess it's $5 now. I haven't been in there for a while. I guess it's $5. If we pay our $5 admission fee, the taxpayers are on the hook for, depending upon what numbers we use for admissions, between $100 and $150 a time. So think about that. Can you imagine if you had to pay $100 or $150 to go in there and use the pool? I mean, you'd never use it. But because you can use it, and then you can slough that responsibility off onto the other taxpayers, most of whom don't use it, how right is that? So I'm not advocating closing the pool permanently, but I am advocating taking a look at it as a possibility for some cost savings. I think there's possibilities. There's been arguments. Well, you can't get rid of the people. You can't just hire them for half a year, the people that work there. Well, there's other ways to do it. If you really want this to work, there's ways to do it. You can shift some of those positions into other positions. In the summertime, the city is very busy, and the city actually hires extra people in the summer to do different things like landscaping and grounds maintenance and recreation, and library gets a lot busier in the summer, and so where there's a will, there's a way, and I think we just need to think about it as a possibility. And I just want to mention one other thing. If you're absolutely dead set on not ever closing the pool ever for any reason, you're just going to keep it open no matter what it costs, well, you may still be able to eliminate property tax and accommodate the pool. I mean, what I'm suggesting here is about $150,000 annual savings, and I think for the pool if we closed it during summer months. That could be a conservative estimate, but again, we've come up with over $1 million in possible cost savings, and so if we take out $150,000, you still have plenty of options for eliminating property tax. So again, we can't force anybody to do anything in the city, but I think it's good to get the conversation out there, especially to make people understand how expensive that swimming pool is. It's very expensive. So moving on here, part of the thing with eliminating property tax is there's kind of a no-brainer here. That means if you eliminate property tax, you eliminate a lot of the administrative cost associated with administering property tax. There's quite a bit of cost associated, which includes an assessor. We have to have an assessor come in. That's an outside assessor. It's about $25,000 a year to have that assessor come in, and that's not needed at all if you eliminate property tax. And we're thinking possibly the administrative positions could be reduced, and the city administration, because arguably the city administration, one of their major jobs is to facilitate property tax. So if you take away one of their major jobs, well, by golly, that administrative budget should shrink. I mean, it really needs to shrink then. If you eliminate some of the work that they need to do, then they don't need as many people, they don't need as many resources to do that work. So that's kind of a no-brainer. Another one that we're looking at is the recreation position. The city of Craig has a full-time recreation position. Again, this is something that a lot of people really enjoy, they really like. And it's essentially after-school activities for children, and the youth center, and the person who runs this helps facilitate powers, does a lot of things, and most people would argue that that's a good thing, and it may or may not be, but it's also it's quite expensive, and you can't argue that it's an essential service. And it's not enjoyed by all. And this is something Lisa brought up when I first started talking here, that she reminded me to talk about it a little bit. And that is that really this city corporation, if you want to keep everybody happy, if you want to keep everyone really happy, then you really should focus your efforts on essential services that everyone enjoys. So if you're going to take tax money from people, nobody's going to argue about you taking tax money from them and to pay for their sewer, because everybody uses a sewer. And the same goes for water. I mean, who's going to complain that the water plant, that they're taking some tax money of ours to pay for the water plant to make sure we have clean water? And nobody's going to argue about that, because everybody uses it. Water, sewer, garbage, roads. We all use that. And, whether we're happy or not to pay it, we do pay it, and we're willing to pay it, because we can see a direct benefit to ourselves there. And what creates some angst and some animosity and some controversy is when the city corporation begins to use taxpayer dollars for non-essential services. And another way of looking at it is using those taxpayer dollars to accommodate special interest. Anytime a small minority of the people enjoy a service that's paid for by the vast majority, it really can be termed a special interest. And if you're one of those people who are in that category of special interest, maybe you should ask yourself, do I feel right about utilizing everyone else's tax money for my special interest? It's something to consider. I consider it all the time. So what we're looking at is that recreation position should be sunsetted out. I think I think when that individual retires, it's probably not a good thing to rehire that in that position. A lot of that activity can be taken care of through volunteers. A lot of it already is taken care of through volunteers. And volunteers will step up to a lot of that. So these are all just ideas, and we have more, but we aren't going to go through them all today. But other people have given us ideas. When we started getting signatures for the referendum, we had people with all sorts of ideas on how the city can cut costs, and they're all good ideas. And I think over the next 6 years, should this pass, we'll come up with all sorts of really good ideas. There's plenty of time then for good debate on each and every one of these ideas to come up with the best solutions. But you know, the question I guess comes up: is the city of Craig? Is it possible to finance the city of Craig? Can the city of Craig continue to function without property tax? Well, I think the answer is yes, it can. Will the city of Craig function exactly the way it has in the past? Well, I think the answer is no. It won't. It'll have to change. Some things will have to change a bit. And so, you know, unless there's some big windfalls that happen, you know, there's going to have to be some belt tightening, and there's going to have to be perhaps some more voluntary activities happening, and maybe some increased revenue in some other areas. But there's possibilities, and to say that, you know, oh, how are you going to pay for the government if you get rid of property tax? Well, I've just given you, you know, around $1 million in possibilities, and I'm sure you can come up with a lot more. To me, the answer is yes. I think we can. So I'll ask Lisa if she has any more to offer here.
We don't know what's going to happen if we bring so much more money.
Yeah, that's a good point. Lisa makes a good point here. You know, we really don't know what's going to happen. You know, we think, well, if you get rid of property tax, it's going to be like this, or it's going to be like that. This is going to happen, or that's going to happen. Well, we don't know that. We don't exactly know what's going to happen. But it might cause a little mini boom here in Craig. You know, people are going to be looking at Craig as possibly as a much better place to live because of the fact that they have actual land ownership. And I know I've spoken with people around the island and other places on POW who don't want to live. They'd like to live in Craig because they like the location, but they don't like the idea that they don't own their land here, that they have to pay property tax for that land. So it could create a little mini boom in town. Businesses are going to benefit, and you know, with businesses benefiting and perhaps even opening new businesses here, that could bring in new tax revenue from sales tax. We don't know what's going to happen. There could be a huge trickle-down effect from this. So anyway, I hope you'll keep an open mind to this, and I hope this has been helpful in giving you some ideas. We'll try to link as much of this stuff as we can to the end of this YouTube. We're not too sure how to do that yet, but we'll figure it out. And if you have any questions or comments, you know, you can always find Lisa or I. It's a fairly small town, so most people can find us, and we're very happy to talk with anybody, anytime. So again, we hope this is helpful, and good luck. Thank you.